everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So casting your movie is very important, maybe one of the most important aspects of movie making, because if you cast the right people, they can lift an average and mundane script. For instance, if somebody else than, Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson would have played, the titular characters in A Hitman's Bodyguard, that movie would have been pretty average. But with them, that movie was fucking great. At the same time, you can also go the other way around, like Luc Besson's brain-dead decision to have these two knuckleheads absolutely screwing Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, but I have been yapping around about that thing too long. You can also overcast your movie, because in the early 60s there was this movie called Conga, a pretty forgotten B-C level kind of a sci-fi horror movie, but it was casted with Michael Koff as the main character. It's like having Laurence Olivier in Godzilla or something like that. It doesn't work. Kind of the same thing with this, because Alicia Vikander is one of the greatest actresses working today. Having her in a video game movie about Lara Croft, it just doesn't feel right. But this movie carried a bit of a reputation before it came out, because some people said that this was going to be one of the worst movies of all time. Some previews suggested that this was going to be an absolute dumpster fire. That wasn't the case. I don't know if this movie is blandly offensive or offensively bland, but I do know that casting Alicia Vikander in this movie gave me some expectation that this movie was going to be something it wasn't. It was not serious enough so that we could take it serious, but it was too serious for it to be really that playful, fun adventure movie that we all hoped that we were going to see. But let's find out what this movie is about, shall we? This is the 2018 Tomb Raider. The daughter of Sir Richard Croft doesn't want her inheritance from her father because she still believes that he's alive. So she's, just floating around in society, having this fantastic bicycle thing that this movie begins. A great montage and when she's just, bicycling around in England. That was kind of cool. After some very convoluted thing, I don't know if it was quite as convoluted in the way that, Lara Croft found that box, the clock thing inside of that box, inside of the cupboard under the stairs or whatever it was in the first Tomb Raider movie. I don't know which one of those two was most convoluted, but it was very convoluted. It's a video camera that contains a message from her father about the finding he has made outside of Japan on a small island. I don't want to spoil too much of what that is, because I really liked the aspects of the findings in this Japanese island. So she goes there and finds herself in a big adventure, and also finding an evil organization head up by everybody's favorite villain in 2018, Walton Goggins, who of course doesn't have enough screen time and is not allowed to flesh out his character enough for us to really care about him. But what's new about modern filmmaking? But after that we basically have a classical villain and hero that are trying to fight each other and avoiding a disaster to go down. That is essentially what this is. The action sequences in this movie was barely okay and often pretty decent, but most of the swashbuckling adventure sequences and the big action set pieces that we are treated to, I've seen those in other movies, and they were often done with more creativity, more love, more joy, and looked bigger, or it was pretty much better than this one. So it was, it just happened. And Alicia Vikander doesn't really have that much to work with. Her character is pretty one-dimensional and is this, classical hero that we're supposed to root for because she is the hero, and she doesn't really have that much of a personality. She really gave it her best, but I was never invested in what was going to happen to her next. But there were, things here and there which I thought actually really worked, and there were some sequences I think was kind of fun, and I thought it was gonna lead to, a big, overblown, spectacular finish. But all my hopes were sacrificed on the altar of mediocrity when we had a very underwhelming and very downplayed played finale, which sort of reminded me a lot about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, aka one of my favorite movies of all time, which unfortunately didn't play to this movie's strength at all. Add to that some sequel baiting in the end to a movie that I don't think is ever going to emerge. This was kind of a boring mess of a movie that had good intention but ended up looking a lot less big scale than its predecessors. We'll get to them in a second. But at the same time, I kind of like that we were just on this one location, which, you know, gave this movie a little bit of a different vibe to itself. But in the end, I couldn't muster myself to carry that much about this movie. Now, if we compare this movie to the two that came in the early 2000s. This one is better because those two movies were absolute dumpster fires, except of course that you couldn't help but oogling a lot at Angelina Jolie, because she was smoldering hot in that one. Oh my! But apart from that, those movies were horrible. This movie is just a boring, very standard, lackluster adventure movie that wants to be something that it isn't. I think that one of the problems is that it is very difficult to make a adventure movie that is set in present day. Even a movie like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was hampered horrendously because of it felt wrong seeing Indiana Jones ride the subway. It didn't feel like he belonged there. That entire movie felt like he didn't belong there. But that's a story for another time. Not a very good movie. Not a very good finale to one of my favorite film series of all time. But now we're talking about the new Tomb Raider movie. Is it bad? No. Is it good? No. This is about as good an example of what a barely okay movie looks like. It had a pretty big budget, it had some pretty big names, and it looked kind of bland and nothing stood out and everything was just kind of there. Everything has been homogenized and pasteurized and sanitized and everything was just a little bit But do I think it was a terrible movie? No, I do not. But I think it was a lackluster movie that was too long, that had too little to tell, and attempted to be serious while at the same time sort of trying to maintaining that this was a good, fun video game movie. And everybody who were clamming for this to be the video game movie that was going to break the curse of they were always kind of bad, they would have to wait a little bit longer for a movie that actually, you know, would make sense and would do the video game characters some justice. And if you are into this type of, you know, modern adventure movies, I think this one is not very good, but I've seen worse. If you want to see a good modern day adventure movie, I would pick the movie Uncharted, which I actually think is an underrated little gem that came out a few years ago. That movie is good, this one isn't. This was a very lackluster adventure. Alicia Vikander does what you can with this mundane script, but I cannot give the new Tomb Raider movies more than 33 points. It's a bland, boring, slightly too long movie with decent effects and a pretty big budget that somehow doesn't make it look big. It make it look a bit mid-card in my opinion, but maybe that's just me. So we'll see you next time for so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.